But that night, Max would forever change the lives of the Thompson family and all who knew him. It was a peaceful evening at the Thompson household. Jack Thompson sat in the living room with his wife. The room was filled with a warm glow as they watched their 3-year-old daughter Emily play with their loyal 3-year-old German Shepherd. Max was not just a pet, but was a part of the family. He was loyal to them, though more to Emily. He would sit nearer to her, watch her every move, and with keen eyes, was always ready to alert and protect her at any instance. Ominous warning, little did the family know, this night was not like any other. The quiet evening suddenly went into a different turn when Max's ears sprang up and his body tense. He lifted his nose, sniffing the air. A strange smell of a faint trace of smoke wafted through the house, but nobody aside from Max noticed it. His instincts kicked in instantly. The formerly relaxed dog was now shifting up and down, his paws nervously clicking the wooden floor. He stared at Jack in urgency, trying to tell him something, which only he could feel. His eyes were intense, unyielding, and with an unusual focus. Jack found the normally ebullient Max acting strange and furrowed his brow. But before he could think little more of it, Max darted toward the stairs, his head turned back as if begging for Jack to follow. Puzzled but trusting his loyal companion, Jack rose from his seat and followed Max, a growing sense of unease building up inside him toward the upper floor, as the faint scent of smoke grew much stronger. His heart beating faster, Jack felt instantly that something must be very wrong indeed. Up the stairs and at the top, Max stopped outside Emily's. The soft but insistent barking from room barked softly but insistently. Jack's heart fell when he opened the door and saw what was producing the smoke, the small, fluttering flame working its way along the curtains near the head of Emily's bed. The fire was contained, yet the threat was real and undoubtedly frightening. It was too much for Jack to comprehend in one split second. The sight and the urge to act with urgency, to save his daughter above all else. He reaches for Emily's favorite stuffed animal, the one small comfort that will help soothe her in this disorienting situation. The flames grew, and with them, the panic rising in Jack's chest. He held Emily shut, his whirling mind full of fears as he turned to see Max standing in the doorway, his eyes locked onto the menace, ready to act. That was the moment when Jack knew they were in a race against time, and that Max was going to be their protector through it all. Max's character changed from anxious to determined in a second. He stared intently at the roaring flames as if trying to assess his next move. His protective instinct sharpened and guided him into action. He seemed to sense the urgency, the threat to his family, especially to Emily. His closest comrade Max looked once more at Jack, and then at Emily. With a profound, resolute breath, he launched himself toward the flames. He vanished into the now thick smoke that enveloped the room. Jack screamed his name as he watched Max disappear into the fog. The heat was becoming unbearable, and the smoke reeked, burning his eyes. But all Jack could think about was how his brave dog plunged in a fire without a smidgen of hesitation. Every second felt like an eternity. Bravery such as Max's leaves one out of breath. Torn between trying to save him and keeping safe, Emily clung to her father's shirt, wide-eyed and scared, not understanding the complete danger of the position, but knowing from what was happening that something was terribly wrong. Jack held her tight, whispering that it all would be okay, even though his heart was heavy with doubt. At that torturous instance, he couldn't feel but helpless gratitude toward Max, who had put himself right in harm's way for their protection. Fire crackled and hissed, consuming part of the room and casting flickering shadows. And filling the air with the acrid smell of burning, Jack's mind raced with questions, each one filled with dread. Would Max make it out? What drove him to such bravery? Just as Jack's hope began to waver, he heard a distant faint barking. His heart skipped a beat, the sound rekindling a glimmer of hope that perhaps against all odds Max was still fighting to find his way back outside. Flashing lights filled the street as the fire trucks arrived, their sirens piercing the night. Firefighters jumped out, gearing up quickly and assessing that the flames had already engulfed part of the Thompson home when Jack burst outside, clinging to Emily, his face a mixture of relief and desperation as he wildly gestured toward the upstairs window, explaining in strangled breaths how his dog Max was still inside. The firefighters nodded, serious faces reflecting that they comprehended the urgency and how much emotional weight was laced into Jack's words. They rushed toward the house, holding their hoses at the ready, as some readied themselves to dive into the smoke-filled rooms. Jack helplessly watched as his heart pounded. Holding Emily close, his mind flashed between memories of Max as a playful, joyful companion and the terrifying image of him lost somewhere in the thick, consuming smoke. Emily, too, felt the magnitude of the moment, her small face buried in her father's chest, whispering quietly, "Will Max be okay, Daddy?" Jack did not know how to answer. All he could do was hold her tighter, his mind pleading silently that Max would somehow find his way back to them around him. Neighbors began to gather, some whispering words of encouragement, others they knew Max, knowing him to know and know about his gentle nature and loyalty. All community held their breath, waiting and hoping, each moment stretching into what felt like an eternity. Minutes passed, each one heavier than the last. Firefighters disappeared in the house, their outlines barely visible through the smoke, as they are searching for any signs of life. Jack's heart was torn, a painful mix of gratitude for Max's loyalty and fear he might have made himself. Just as despair was starting to settle in, one of the firefighters emerged, and in his arms was a fireproof doused but unmistakably Max. And he wasn't alone. The crowd watched in unison, holding their collective breath as they saw Max emerge from the smoke, carefully cradled in the firefighter's arms. But there was more. Nestled against Max's chest, hidden in his protective embrace, several tiny, trembling kittens pressed their small bodies close to him, almost as if they, too, knew the safety he offered. Even amidst all this, it was obvious that Max hadn't just risked his life to flee the flames, but had stayed behind. Compelled to save these helpless animals instinctively, the firefighter laid Max to the ground carefully, and Jack ran swiftly to him, falling to his knees beside his loyal companion. His fur was burnt. He was coughing softly, but there in his eyes was the same steadfast loyalty. Then his voice quivered in words of appreciation as he stroked the head of Max. The reality of what happened had Jack in full force, because this wasn't an act of loyalty towards his family, but was a heroic display of compassion beyond anything they might have envisioned. Emily knelt down, her small hand reaching out to touch Max gently, her face a mixture of awe and love as she whispered, "Thank you, Max," her words full of so much sincerity and a depth that belied her young age. She leaned down to place a soft kiss on his head, and for a moment, it felt as though the world had gone still around them. Neighbors wiped away tears, and even the firefighters, who had seen countless tragedies and triumphs, looked visibly moved. Even the kittens seemed to understand the significance of Max's bravery. They huddled closer to him, still frightened, but feeling they were in a safe place. Max, bedraggled and battered, slowly turned his head to lick one of the kittens, as if to reassure them that everything would be just fine. In that one act of tenderness, everyone there saw the deep heroism and unselfishness animals can be, a reminder of the pure, unadulterated love they bring into our lives. And while firefighters struggled to douse the remaining flames, the community started to gather around Max in a circle of protection. In the kittens he had rescued, word of his heroism spread quickly among onlookers, with neighbors whispering in awe and telling stories of how they'd always known Max was special, but how they'd never really understood the depth of his bravery. One by one, they approached the Thompson family to offer them blankets and water, and words of comfort. Their respect for Max in their quiet gestures, the firefighters, visibly moved by what they had just witnessed, approached Jack and Emily with a look of admiration in their eyes. One of them, a seasoned firefighter who had seen hundreds of rescuers, knelt beside Max, shaking his head almost in shock. "In all my years, I've never seen anything like this," he said softly. "This dog, he didn't just save himself, he saved lives. I think you have a real hero here." Jack's heart swelled up with pride and gratitude. He reached out to shake the firefighter's hand, his voice choked with emotion. "Thanks," he murmured, his eyes looking down at Max as the crowd showered him with gentle hands and kind words. Max was exhausted, breathing shallow, but there was with a sense of peace in his eyes, as if he knew he had done something great. Emily kept stroking Max's side, her little hands caressing his fur. She muttered words of love and appreciation, as if trying to say so much from her young heart, but did not know how to put it down. The tie between her and Max was powerful enough, but that night it was like they had communicated in their own special, wordless way, a silent understanding between child and protector, bonded forever by the bravery shown that night. That had begun with fear and doubt, now somehow felt it was no longer just a tale of survival. It had evolved into a tale of bravery, love, and sacrifice in that still moment among friends and strangers alike. The Thompson family realized that Max's heroics had not only saved lives, but also that the power of compassion can inspire even the smallest, most vulnerable lives to unbelievable courage. In its days that followed, Max's story spread across the town, captured the hearts of all who knew of his bravery, reached outside their neighborhood. As local newspapers and online stories were written praising the hero dog that had risked his life for others. People came by from everywhere to offer gratitude and support, bringing treats for Max and small donations to help with any medical needs he may have. Max became an inspiration, a living testament to the quiet heroism that animals can embody. Jack and Emily made sure Max received the best care, tending to his wounds and making sure he had plenty of rest. They were by his side through every moment of recovery, showering him with love and affection. The kittens, too, had become an unexpected yet cherished part of the family, often curling up beside Max as if they knew he was their savior. Emily named each of them, and every night she would sit by Max and the kittens, telling them stories, her voice filled with a new appreciation for the resilience and courage she had witnessed. Neighbors who had once passed by with a simple wave now stopped to ask about Max, wanted to hear firsthand about the incredible night that had brought everyone closer together. Many came with their own dogs, and the sight of Max playing with these animals created a kind of unspoken unity in the community. The yard of the Thompson family was now a gathering place, a place where people would come and share their thanks in their own stories of pets that had touched their lives. One evening, as sun set, Jack sat with Max on the porch, watching the warm glow of the sky. He stroked Max's head, his heart heavy in gratitude and admiration. "I don't think we'll ever be able to thank you enough, boy," Jack said softly, his thick with emotion. "You've shown us what love and loyalty truly mean." Max looked up at him, his eyes serene, full of wisdom, as if he understood every word. In those quiet moments of recovery and reflection, the Thompson family began to feel that they hadn't just gained a hero, but rediscovered a deeper sense of connection to each other and the community. Max reminded them all that sometimes it's the smallest acts of bravery and compassion that can leave the greatest impact. As Max continued to heal, the Thompson family found to themselves. He reminded them of the inward expense of his deeds. Jack, he especially sat in silent thought, wonder at the valor Max had demonstrated. There is one image which remains: Max disappearing into the flames, moved by a force beyond simple loyalty. This was more than the instinct of a pet. This was pure, selfless bravery. Jack contemplated upon the many who would have stood as Max did, placing everything for the lives they barely knew. The family talks heavily depended on Max's heroism. Emily, upon the innocence of a child, posed questions that only furthered their affection. "Daddy, do you think Max knew he was going to save the kitten?" she asked one evening. Jack paused, thinking about her words. "I think he did, sweetheart. Max has always looked out for us. I think he felt it was his duty, just like he does with you." Max had moved from being a family pet to be also a symbol of safety and love, an embodiment of the powerful bond that could potentially exist between species. Jack found himself rapping with friends and colleagues, as friends in turn commenting on how each retelling seemed to speak to them at a soul level. People began to look at Max as a symbol of good that exists in the world, a source of hope and strength in dark days. The firemen who came from the local station, who had been part of that rescue night, came by time and again, sharing their stories of great feats and sacrifice. One such fireman was deeply touched, confided in Jack that he had been carrying around a heavy burden with his job and all those lives he had tried to save, but lost in this process. "Max reminded me why I do this," he said in Thanksgiving. The smile revived in him, showed me that all life is worth fighting for, no matter how small it is. During those moments of shared reflection, the Thompsons realized that Max's deeds had a ripple effect. He had not only saved lives, but had also inspired new hope and purposes around him. Heroism in Max was more than one act of courage. It reminded one of how tremendous the impact of compassion and courage could be, touching lives in ways they had never even imagined. As time passed, the bond between Max and his family deepened. The kittens that had once been timid and clung to Max for protection had grown into playful, inquisitive companions, always at his side. Emily adored them, frequently laughing at their frolics in the yard around her, with Max supervising them like some benevolent guardian. The family had kept the kittens, feeling they too were now part of the legacy from that unforgettable night. The whole community came together for Max, who organized a small ceremony in his honor. It wasn't grand, but it was heartfelt, a neighbor's congregation in the park to celebrate his heroism. Children came with handmade signs, drawing pictures of Max with hearts and tiny flames, symbolizing his bravery. A few local officials came to present Max with a hero dog medal, a symbol of the gratitude felt by all who had been witness to or heard about his courageous act. Jack and Emily stood proudly beside Max as he received his medal. The community erupted into applause, their cheers filled with genuine admiration and respect for the Thompsons. It was a humbling moment as they looked down at Max, who remained calm and dignified, as if with pride, yet not desiring the slightest bit of recognition. Max simply sat by his family's side, his eyes scanning the crowd with quiet contentment, always protective, always aware. As the event wound down, people approached the Thompsons with stories of their own pets, tales of loyalty and love which mirrored the connection they saw between Max and his family. It was a day that would leave an indelible mark upon all who were there, a celebration not only of the bravery of Max, but also of the resilience and loyalty that animals bring into our lives. The simple ceremony became a reminder of how deeply these companions touch our hearts. The love pure and unwavering. The Thompson family left the park that day, feeling a profound sense of gratitude, not just for Max's heroic actions, but for the way he had brought the community together, inspiring a sense of unity and appreciation. Max showed them all that heroes come in many forms, and sometimes they're found in the ones who walk beside us. On four paws, their loyalty quiet, but unbreakable that evening. As the family sat in the quiet of their home, Max lay surrounded by his family, and the kittens he had saved. Atmosphere was warm, filled with a deep sense of peace and love. Emily rested her head against Max's side, running her fingers gently through his fur while Jack and his wife watched. There was a quiet awe in their eyes. The house felt complete, as if Max's courage had not only saved lives, but also wove them all together into a bond that was now stronger than ever. In the dim light, Jack looked at Max and reflected on everything that had happened. This dog, who had once been a playful puppy in their lives, has now grown into a true protector. Max faced danger with unwavering bravery, guided not by expectation or reward, but by love and instinctive, unbreakable loyalty that had brought them through the darkest of nights. It was a reminder that sometimes the greatest acts of heroism don't come from grand gestures, but from the quiet, steady love that stays with us, even in our hardest moments. As the kittens curled up beside him, Max gently licked each one. His movements were tender, protective. It was as though he comprehended the very deep influence he made not only to his family, but to every life he had touched. Jack felt a throttling ache in his chest, and he realized that in Max they had found a true friend and a hero who had taught them that strength and love can bring anyone out of impossible situations. And if anything, the whole family story with Max became a beautiful testament to the indissoluble relationship between human beings and animals. What Max showed of heroism was something that each of them wouldn't have envisioned to end. What he brought was a last legacy that would forever be in their hearts. And those who heard the story he had to tell as they sat together that evening, surrounded by love and gratitude, the Thompson family knew Max had given them a gift, one that would stay with them, reminding them every day of the courage and loyalty that make life truly extraordinary.